Dear children, we discussed some topics of history, chapter 1, the medieval period in India, in the previous videos in part 1 and part 2. Today, I am here again to discuss the third segment of the same chapter in part 3. First of all, let's overview the topics again. Children, in video part 1, we discussed about point number 1, introduction of the medieval period in India. In video number 2, we discussed about point number 2, the impact of geography on history. Point number 3, terms used to describe the Indian subcontinent. Today, we will discuss about point number 4, sources of information for medieval history. For example, inscriptions, coins, buildings, paintings, and historical writings. So let's start new topic, sources of information for medieval history. Children, do you know how do historians reconstruct history? Reconstruct means collect and write history. From where do historians get information about our past or about events that happened in the past? Yes, children, historians make sure about the information by rechecking a fact from different sources. But what are those different sources? So let's discuss about those sources. Children, see this chart. Last year in class 6, you read how historians depend upon archaeology to know about ancient past. To know about prehistory period, they excavate ancient settlements and study the remains of human-made objects. Excavate means dig up. For example, tools, ornaments, weapons, toys, pottery. There are some buildings, graves, potsherds, seals, etc. For the period after writing was discovered, historians could reconstruct past from the written sources like inscriptions, coins, religious, secular, and travelers' account and monuments. So, after discussing what are sources of history and their different types, now let's read about the sources of information and evidences used by the historians to write about the medieval period of Indian history. The different sources are number 1, epigraphic evidence, inscriptions. Number 2, numismatic evidence, coins. Number 3, archaeological evidence, buildings and sculptures. Number 4, artistic evidence, paintings. Number 5, literary evidence, historical writings. Now, we will discuss all sources of information of medieval period of history that historians use to write. Number 1, inscriptions. Inscriptions are epigraphic evidences. Epigraphy means study of inscription. Evidence means proof. Inscriptions are an important source of information about India's past. So let's see what are inscriptions. Inscriptions are words written or engraved on hard surfaces like metal, rock, and stone surfaces. For example, in class 6, you read of the pillar and rock inscriptions of Emperor Ashoka the Great. Inscriptions have two phases. During first phase, in the beginning, inscriptions were written on the faces of cliffs, on stone pillars, inside caves, and on rocks. During second phase, in the course of time, inscriptions were written on metal like coins and copper plates. What is written on copper plates? Copper plates inscriptions record number one, land grants by the rich to temples. Number two, the achievements of the kings. Like we have found inscriptions in Karnataka. This record belongs to the Chalukyan period from 5th to 9th century CE. Children, now let's see size of these inscriptions. Inscriptions may be number one, short, such as two-line dedication of a temple or a statue. Number two, lengthy, such as long poems praising the achievements of kings. These long poems in praise of kings are called prashasti. These were written by court poets. Now, point number two, coins. Coins are numismatic evidences. Evidences means proof. What is numismatics? The study of coins is called numismatics. What are coins? Coins are pieces of metal that are used as money to buy things and other services. Now, let's read how do the coins help the historians. Coins tell us and help us to know about the dates of the kings and their kingdoms. Kingdoms means areas of the kings, and the kings they ruled from which period to which period. Number two, kings special interest. Interest means hobbies. For example, they were fond of hunting, etc. Number three, kings achievements means their battles and their victories. Children, what do you see in this picture? There are some pictures of present day coins and notes. There are so many things shown on the coins and notes. For example, date, year, emblem, amount, etc. In the same way, you can see pictures of some old coins. Number one, gold coins. They were called tanka. They were issued by Balban during 1266 to 1287 CE. Number two, silver coins. They were issued by Muhammad bin Tughlaq, one of the most powerful rulers of medieval India during 1327 CE. Now, point number three, buildings and sculptures are archaeological evidences. What is archaeology? It is the study of the physical remains of human life in the past. For example, tools, ornaments, weapons, toys, pottery. Then we have temples, palaces, mosques, etc. So, from these remains and buildings, we come to know about the religious practices, the political conditions, the economic conditions, and the social conditions of that time to which they belong. Now, let's see some examples of these buildings. Number one, there are some mosques like the Jama Masjid in Delhi. Then we can see there are some forts like those at Delhi, Gwalior, Agra, and Mandu. And there are some palaces like those at Jaipur, Jodhpur, Deeg, and Hyderabad, etc. So, children, that's all for today. In the next part, we will study about remaining sources of information for medieval history. Till then, take care. Goodbye.